The Hot Stove on Hockey Night in Canada.
Scott Morrison, Glenn Healy, Mike Milbury. Crushing news for Mike here. Don Cherry's our Siskel and Ebert. And your big movie of the week?
I watched the Gran Torino. I mean, I loved it like 3 times, you know. Clint Eastwood, tremendous movie, you know. Big line, I finish things. Bang, you know.
Well, Grape's a little cool on it. Sorry about that for you. Hey, Thomas Placantis, what's happening?
Well, they've had good talks with the Canadians. They've made good progress. They haven't agreed to terms, but they are on the same page in terms of the financials. They have to wait until the salary cap, which we will do tonight, is pretty much determined going forward before they can finalize an arrangement. But it looks like something will get done eventually.
Kat, might as well bring that news up.
Projecting that growth this year will be 1%, mostly because of the strong Canadian dollar. But the projections, if playoffs stay the same, the cap will go up by $900,000, and it'll be $57.7 million. Don't you wish you could have spent that on your players?
With a floor of 41.7.
Oh, you
did?
did.
On myself.
Hey, Mike, just before we get into Phoenix and Winnipeg and all the prospects, we were talking earlier today to Mike about the 2000 draft selection of Rick DiPietro and what he went through. And you mentioned that you went right after Gaborik and DiPietro, and maybe Danny Heatley slept a little under the cracks of your scouting system. Now, here's Edmonton with a chance at Seguin or Taylor Hall. And have you heard what is being said in Edmonton?
Well, what's shocking to me is that Steve Tambellini has said this draft belongs to my scouting staff. Now, maybe he's trying to make them feel good, I guess, but if you're drafting in the top 5, you should have traveled wherever these guys are to make sure you have a 100% handle on it. You can't hand that off to your staff. Yeah, you'd like to think that there's consensus.
Why didn't you take Gaborik?
Well, we went out and saw Gaborik and 3 straight tournaments, and he, for whatever reason, one tournament he didn't have a centerman. He scored 2 goals in 12 games. Great wheels. You could see him. He was involved all the time, but couldn't finish, and that was the danger.
Well, in fairness to Tambellini, he is in Plymouth tonight watching Hall and Seguin play in their OHL semifinal series, so he'll have input, but I think he's probably patting his scouts on the back a little bit here. Give him some props.
I can't think for a second he hasn't already decided. If he hasn't, not decided by now, I'd be totally shocked.
But the question I asked was, who gets the final call? Is it you? And he said, this is my Stu McGregor's draft.
Who's firing who? That's who gets the final call, okay? McGregor's not firing Tambellini if the mistake's made.
Scott, give us the update now on Phoenix as you see it.
Well, there was more negotiations going on. The city of Glendale was looking at the lease proposals put forward by both sides. I was told that a memorandum of understanding, which is a precursor to the lease that gives out the details of what the city wants in the lease, will be given to both sides, and at some point this week there could be a vote. All of that means that everybody involved seems to think they are on course to getting a deal done.
There were enormous fines if the team left the city before bankruptcy.
Right.
Because of the bankruptcy, they can walk in June. So Glendale, you might lay down your demands. You don't have any rights here. You better make nice with Mr. Reinsdorf and cut a sweetheart deal. Otherwise, like Grape says, the team's going to end up somewhere else.
It sounds like it's Reinsdorf's team, doesn't it?
Everybody who's surrounding it seems to think so, because his financing seems to be a little bit more stable than the other group, although they say theirs is contingent upon getting the lease agreement that they require.
City wants to do business with Reinsdorf.
Right.
If I'm an NHL player,
well, he's got his baseball complex,
and you get Reinsdorf coming in as an owner, I wouldn't want to do business with Reinsdorf.
But you wonder how he makes it. Does David Thompson sit in the weeds and buy it off Jerry, or does David step in yet and buy this team?
I think that's plan B. I think Gary has laid it all out that he wants it to be Phoenix. I don't know why.
Yeah,
if
why?
you can't define, if that's not financial failure, I don't know what is. But he wants it to be Phoenix, and he's going to make it as best possible to be Phoenix. But, you know, other centers would have a better chance to make it financially.
Well, in the sense is, if Reindorf gets it, there will be an out clause in there after a couple of years if they don't meet certain revenue targets. So Winnipeg could lie in the weeds, but there's no shortage of trouble spots.
You want to thought on that?
I just wanted Jim Balzilli to come back, because it was so much fun talking about how he was doing.
The Anschutz Group owns 50 arenas, and Philip Anschutz, the owner of the Los Angeles Kings, obviously has Kansas City and Vegas, and this continues to be an out for the NHL, but he's also got arenas in Europe. And my understanding, let's get into this KHL report that Elliot Friedman had on Inside Hockey. My understanding was Alex Medvedev at one point wanted to have the Super League in Europe, but he's got 24 teams in the KHL. They're going up by 2 again next year. He hasn't got the political power to be able to contract enough in Russia to start building through the rest of Europe. So it doesn't look like it'll be Medvedev who creates the Super League in Europe. It does look like it'll be Anschutz in the NHL. Do you see that as a possibility?
Well, when it comes to Medvedev and Gazprom and the gas company, I mean, the financial crisis of the world crippled that natural gas company. So that was probably the biggest stumble right away, right out of the chute. I could see the NHL with 31% of its members being from Europe, with us going to the Olympics, with the way the Olympics work, with the advertising groups that are in Europe that we don't use in the National Hockey League. 6 teams this year, 8 teams probably down the road. I can't see how we can't look at Europe as a major revenue source for the NHL.
Why isn't the NHL in office overseas? Because the NBA is established, like Moscow. It would seem like a natural fit, Glenn.
No, you're right. The NHL has 2 people that work at hockey in Europe, and they need to get bigger and better. You know, just last week, the iPod, Apple came up with a European app for NHL hockey, and Apple considers it to be the best app for an iPod that's on the market. And anyone who's got kids, that's all your kids come up to you every day and say, can I download this app? Can I download that app? So another revenue stream for Europe.
I thought Elliott's report was interesting in that Medvedev just destroyed the model that the NHL uses. It's not ticket revenue. It's sponsorship revenue and eventually television revenue, which is a far different cry from what's happening and maybe ultimately the way to go.
In Pittsburgh, tickets are going up 18% next year as an indication of that with the new arena. Okay, the Swedish Ice Hockey Federation has its deal with the NHL. What's the complication there?
Well, the Swedes and the Finns, and then we heard tonight that the Swedish Federation has sent a note to its junior players that either sign a contract or you will not likely be able to go to the World Juniors or the national team programs. And if you want to leave to go to the NHL, it's going to cost you $100,000.
So think about this thing they sent out to the juniors. It ties you up till you're 22 years old. Okay, if you go to the NHL, if you go to the CHL, great. It's a $100,000 fine. So all you Swedish players, do not dare sign that agreement. Basically, the NHL's got the federations at gunpoint. You're getting nothing now,
and they can
better sign it or you're going to get something.
Commissioner Gary Bettman is going to join us to announce Kraft Hockeyville tonight. And I'd love to go down that course, but we'll save that for the Stanley Cup playoffs. We're glad Gary's helping us out with the big announcement later tonight on Hockey Night in Canada. That's your Hot Stove.
The Hot Stove on Hockey Night in Canada.